Because of the mutual influences that the Spanish and English had on one another during the early centuries of exploration and colonization, it is useful to consider those features of Spanish life and thought that may have influenced English ideologies about human differences.
One of the features of Spanish life and thought that influenced the English was their religious intolerance that they had developed over time. And so religious intolerance, it proved to be a useful concept for their goal of conquering foreign peoples, right? And also for planting seeds for the use of racial dominance, as we'll see as we continue reading in the book Race in North America by Dr. Audrey Smedley.
As already suggested, the Spanish experience with human diversity was very different from that of the English. Since the 8th century, the Iberian Peninsula had been dominated by a civilization that was at that time among the world's most tolerant.
The Iberian Peninsula is this area right here where you have Spain and Portugal, and you can see where it's located and why it would make sense for this to have been a diverse society with tolerance of people from different backgrounds and cultures.
Under Muslim hegemony, Spain had experienced the formation of a heterogeneous, multicultural society whose population exhibited a broad range of physical features, from the fair skin and blonde hair of older Germanic inhabitants to the dark skin and crinkly hair of West Africans.
Spain had people from parts of Europe with fair skin, and it also had people from West Africa with rich skin, right? Let's cross out that word right here, dark, because that's a spell that people keep putting on themselves whenever they say that they have dark skin, right? The unconscious mind, it associates the word dark with something bad in Western culture, right? Dark time in my life, a dark secret, the realm of darkness, and so forth, right? So you have to stop relating people's skin color with this, okay? So Spain had people with both fair skin and rich skin colors.
Religious tolerance and acceptance was the rule.
And the religion that a person was at this time, it was no big deal. It was tolerated, right? And so this is in the 8th century, which is hundreds of years before the Spanish started their quest to conquer people.
For a while, Muslim, Christians, and Jews led culturally productive lives together and on the whole had remarkably benign relationships, even intermarrying with some frequency. However, with the rise to political power of some of the Christian kingdoms and the thrust to regain Spanish territory for the Catholic Church, the Reconquest, beginning as early as the 9th century, Jews and Muslims came under pressure to convert.
Power and men who were hungry to control people and resources thought it fitting to use the Catholic Church as a means to do so. And so they began applying pressure to the Jews and Muslims to try to get them to convert, right? All this has to do with power and control. And none of this has to do with going into heaven or waiting for Jesus to return, right? Only the lower level people or the most uninformed people believe that, right? But the people who had real knowledge, they knew that religion was to be used as a tool. And so they did.
Conflict ensued, and the entire social system gradually became rigidified into 3 ethnic religious castes, whose relationships in the 15th and 16th centuries were often characterized by fear, mistrust, envy, and hatred. Some 300,000 Jews became Christian by the end of the 15th century, when the marriage of Ferdinand and Isabella had become the political fulcrum symbolizing the rise of modern Catholic Spain. Known as conversos, many of these former Jewish families were wealthy and urban. They also constituted the largest proportion of the educated population. With the fall of Granada in 1492, those Jews who had not converted were expelled.
If they didn't convert, then they had to go. And at this time, Spain was way past its tolerant stage that it once experienced. And it had undergone a makeover and it reinvented itself, and tolerance was no longer suitable for its new objectives.
The Moors, who tended to be concentrated in the southern regions of Spain, in Valencia, Granada, and Castile, underwent forced baptisms early in the 16th century, but their customs, traditions, and language, Arabic, continued intact for a while. Many Moors came to constitute an underclass of laboring people who remained somewhat culturally distinct from the Spanish. Eventually, the state expelled all of the Moriscos, as they were called. Some 275,000 were shipped to North Africa between 1609 and 1614.
They had to go too.
Jealous of the wealth, power, and influence of the Jewish families who had converted, many of whom were using their new Christian identity to advance themselves in the civil or church hierarchies, some Christian leaders began to question the theological probity of some conversos.
Some of the Jews, they were playing the game too. They were undercover converts, right? They acted as if they had converted, but they only did that to get into leadership positions. And they must have been winning because the Christians became jealous and they started to question their sincerity.
Many Christians in the countryside of peasant background emerged as antagonists, not only to the declining Muslim influence, but to what they believed to be the Jewish domination of trade, banking, scholarship, and the arts. In a social drama characterized by intrigues, petty jealousies, and political machinations, opponents began to charge that some of the conversos and their descendants, the new Christians, were secretly practicing Judaism. An Inquisition directed at heretics was established in 1478, sanctioned by the Catholic kings and the Church. It was designed to weed out recalcitrant converts, or secret Jews, by investigating personal behavior and genealogies for evidence of Jewishness. Some of the seminal ideas that later became basic ingredients of a racial worldview were set into motion during this period of rising Christian intolerance and rampant persecution of Jews and Moors.
So this period of religious intolerance and punishing others for having different beliefs was a catalyst for other ideas relating to race, right? Which were created by the colonizers to work on behalf of the colonizers, right? And so these ideas are what they have used to rearrange your reality, right? And these are what you have to escape if you want to climb out of the pit and enter into the free world where life is much better and it makes more sense, right? And so my name is Brooklyn St. Michael, and I'll see you in the free world.